You're listening to Francis Oblivion and the Mad Undead by J. Johnson Higgins. This audiobook edition is a Kiss the Widow production.
Chapter 17. Where the Sun Hides at the Edge of the World.
Journal of Adrian Eckenrode, October 19th.
Adrian!
Becca shouted as she pounced on me and woke me. I was beginning to think I needed SWAT gear to sleep anywhere near her these days.
It's him. I'm sure now. Come on.
Francis.
I saw his face.
She needed only to say these words to get me moving. She snatched my hand and pulled me away. In Diego's experience, it was only a short while after seeing his face that his whole unit was annihilated. She pulled me out into the open and led me up the hill to look back over the mainland at a better vantage point. I was shocked by the scene she'd produced for me just before sunrise. It was a moment of truth. All doubt was gone at that moment. The lighthouse still flashed on and off, but it was a little weaker now that the morning was fast approaching. That was not all. There really was a man walking along the lighthouse balcony. This time we were sure that this was no illusion of optics. It was real. I instantly crouched low to avoid detection. We were probably too far to be spotted with the naked eye, but I took no chances.
That's Francis.
Becca added as she crouched low with me and pointed across the water.
Here, tell me what he's doing.
She handed me the binoculars.
I need to figure out how we're handling this. This accelerates my timeline. If he's here now, I should make my move. If this doesn't work out, we'll need a plan B and maybe even a plan C.
Becca stayed low, leaning to get better light and double-checked our proposed path across the island to a more secure location. She'd pulled her pen and added markings to her map. She anticipated possibly having to flee the area in alternative directions from the original with the new discovery. I was so glad she was on top of those kinds of plans and had some idea of where to go. This island was completely unfamiliar to me and a little complicated. I adjusted the focus and saw Francis moving about on the balcony. He looked like he was surveying the area and inspecting the island from a distance, as we once had. I could make out some of his physical features from the hill, but they were mostly superficial and distant, probably a little inaccurate. He was wearing a black peacoat and he wore dark pants. He was generally what most people would consider an average size, had a muscular build but not excessively so. He had a thick black mustache hanging down his face with a short beard and long strands of unkempt hair whipping about by the light coastal winds. This was different from the creature I pictured from Diego Azar's account. A new face. Before I could truly see his face beyond these cursory descriptions I've given so far, I saw him turn and climb over the edge of the balcony with ease and leap down the full length of the tower like a simple task. It was not. Yet he landed without a struggle. He moved with the elegance of a cat burglar with no signs of strain, but he had no tools to assist him and appeared to almost glide down in a ghostly way. The whole spectacle was unnatural looking. He just floated down to the base of the tower. He jumped. My words did not bear justice. You need to see this. Look what he's doing.
Just a second, babe.
Becca completed her task to some degree or cut it short, and then I shared the binoculars with her, only using one eye and lens, and then eventually passing it back and forth periodically. Both of us watched him move. We saw the sun beginning to peep over the horizon, and for a second, I had a feeling of hope. I knew that these shadows and perhaps the leader did not like the daylight, and I'd assumed we had little to fear at this point. It had saved us before and could maybe save us again. I was celebrating too soon, though. Francis was annoyed by the glimmer of sun in the corner of his eye, and so he dutifully looked to his left. He raised his hands like some kind of goblin. Only then did his eyes become fully visible to us. They were glowing orange dots like hot coals, just as Diego Aza had described. As he shifted his gloved hands, we could see dark clouds spontaneously form in the sky and expand across the land. These clouds took the shape of large hands and began to close in on the sun. The sun became covered enough to be visible but weakly. We could now stare right at it with no strain. Then, with a contorted face, Francis lowered his hands as if tugging down on the celestial body like a bell ringer. With this motion, the sun began to set again from where it came only moments ago. The sun was there, but the cloud cover made its influence slim to none. A fog began to steal in and covered the land as waves on the ocean resembled a moving serpent's skin and slapped violently against the shore. The temperature noticeably fell. We were speechless and gorgonized as we tried to understand what he had just done. Had he literally reversed the spin of the planet? Pushed the sun away? Was it an illusion? Was he simply clouding our minds? It was not explainable, but it was dark again. It was not night, but it resembled the darkness before a major storm. Gray, ghostly, quiet but windy, and with darkness out of sync with our bodies. Can he do that? What did he just do? Becca could not answer, and I didn't expect her to. Everything happened so quickly. Next thing we knew, shadows were emerging from the woods behind him. Undefined humanoid shadows like those that had chased me before. With the sun forced down, a gray misty landscape and no lights except for the beacon. They were now even more undefined and growing in number faster than we could perceive on those sandy shores. For each flash, more of the mad undead appeared. From the look of it, all 50 or so of these beings were on the western shore. All the shadows moved as close as they could to the water and stopped. The shadows all looked back at Francis as if for guidance, but for the moment he just stood. What was he doing? A small fire started before them and added a subtle light. Francis stood before it. He reached into the flame and pulled from it a hot saber which he whirled once and sheathed at his hip. I looked to my left and saw that Becca was then counting the shadows and making tally marks on her map. Before I could speak again, she silenced me with a finger motion as she completed this activity, and when she finished, she spoke.
All of them are there.
Becca confirmed.
That's all 54, and Francis makes 55. He must have called them here, with the lighthouse. They're behaving so differently now. So calm.
Francis turned away from the horizon where the sun had retreated and moved back toward the lighthouse. Correction. He passed the tower and then passed the house too. It was the shed he was after. He approached the shed door. We saw him grab his sword and slash the door. The lock fell to the ground and then the entire door swung open as if of its own free will. For a moment, he looked back in our direction and gave me the feeling that he could see us before proceeding. My eyes locked to his even at that distance. He'd wanted us to more clearly see his face. He had fully taken his form by then, and despite the darkness his face began to light up in a supernatural and sinister way before the small fire. It was now well defined for us. Becca grabbed the binoculars all to herself when she saw the face and stood taller. She'd seen Francis on several occasions before, but only briefly and as an undefined ghost. To date, this was the first time that it had ever manifested itself in a physical form that was not a blur and that she could study.
That's Icky.
Becca swallowed.
My ex.
Then Becca corrected herself.
I mean, it's not him, but that's his image.
Icarus Icky Young, Becca's ex. Allow me to explain something. Unfortunately, Becca's past has been resurrected through the most unimaginable, ghoulish, and fantastical means possible. This was the chosen form for Francis. And while I didn't think I would need to put down much more detail in my journal about Icky, I feel I must again briefly discuss this past lover of hers and highlight his significance to this situation. The vital point is that Francis had chosen to steal the face of someone that Becca knew very well. What does the stealing of this face represent to her? I could never fully know the deepest meaning of it, but I could make some conjectures based on what she's chosen to reveal to me in prior conversations. Becca shed a tear just then, and she disguisedly wiped it away. You may be asking about the origin of this tear. X implies the past, right? So why the tears today? Why now and at the sight of a monster? Wasn't Icky a problem? Didn't they separate? Well, let me tell you. The melancholy was fourfold. First, Becca was quite involved with Icky, as I'd mentioned, for nearly 5 years. An engagement. And she'd known him generally before. Her years with him were some of the most significant and transformative in her life so far, but despite all of this, she was forced to abandon the relationship for her own self-preservation. She'd recently explained. That echo of a man across the way was simultaneously the most toxic of poisons she'd ever taken and was now resurrected as a trap for her to fall into, to weaken her. To Icky, the man of her past, Becca was never enough. Not perfect enough, not tall enough, not thin enough, not fun enough, not pretty enough, not happy enough, simply not ever enough. All of these things being complete and utter bullshit, of course. My evidence? She is right here before my eyes and plenty of everything. Her character is vivid, her body is beautiful, and her life force is so intense that it is terrifying and strong enough to draw demons forth from centuries-old legends to want to taste her blood before ever attempting to destroy her. She had single-handedly stopped a nuclear holocaust. Becca was more than enough. Becca is a rare woman, but this man cheated on her on multiple occasions while claiming Becca was the one. How someone could overlook her, devalue her, or could think the opposite about this wonderful person here before me was totally beyond my means of understanding, but she'd started to believe in Icky's nonsense mantra and could not see herself the way that everyone else saw her after a while. The way that I do now. To this day she is very self-conscious of her body and unnecessarily. She thinks she's ugly. Can you believe that? Ugly. It only showcases the black magic we're dealing with. It makes me wonder how far this monster is willing to go and how many countless victims throughout the history of this creature have suffered from similar illusions of the mind. I've taken the liberty of sparing you her self-deprecations in my written record because to put them into words would be not only a disservice to the truth but also a negative affirmation with great power. As Becca had once explained for me in an unrelated conversation, I'd rather break the spell. So yes, her ex was a toxic poison that was destroying her at her vital core. Francis must have simply magnified that fact. Second, every toxic poison we willingly consume tends to look like a delicious apple. The revenant across the way was that apple in crystal clarity on a golden pedestal. I'll explain. Icky was handsome in a rugged, mysterious, cult leader sort of way. I could see him as the charismatic front man of a band that represents an entire movement. I later learned that this description of mine was not far from the mark, at least in Siena. He was no doubt the alpha in his circle. He also shared many interests with Becca. Believe it or not, Becca's ex-fiancé, Icky Young, again the man, not the demon, taught her nearly everything she knows about motorcycle stunts and was once upon a time the catalyst for her living life on her own terms. Her independence. I don't quite know what that means, but some of this is a retelling of her words. Interestingly, it has always been in Becca's nature to evolve as she had. The interest in motorcycles came first, and only later did she meet Icky and run with the interest further, from mechanics to stunts. From this, it is debatable whether this ex-fiancé of hers helped and taught Becca to become herself, or if she had simply borrowed certain things from him along the way on her inevitable path, exploited the similarities, despite the differences, and tossed out other things less suited for her. I'm willing to bet that everyone is like this to some degree. A muddled bunch of potential energy with often shared experiences and tastes with others. The things we hold most dear or do out of habit are often borrowed from somebody we know or knew or simply emulate, without even being aware, and yet they are completely ours when we examine our lives in a greater context. Does everything start with us? Our persona? Our tastes? Our joys? Or are they incorporated and appreciated after the seeds were planted and made inseparable by another person years ago? The tree grows and becomes ours. Why else would we keep these things unless they were ours? Icky Young represented Becca's natural and inevitable growth, but she'd reached an inflection point where any further growth would have to be toward the sun, not her roots, thus away from him. Third, Becca said that she had distanced herself from an abusive individual. That again is a statement of hers. She hadn't yet given a full statement of that abuse, but I suspect it was pretty bad from what she had told me. She'd had well over a year to cleanse her ex's venom from her system following it. Once she made the world disappear, she had plenty more time to find her place again, bleak as it was. Lastly, Icarus Young had died last year in a motorcycle accident, apparently caused by Francis. The tear in Becca's eye was the pain of thrusting her old world right back into her without warning, and Francis was fully behind this impact, having read her journal and drank her blood. The reminder reduced her to nothing before me, and I had to hold her.
This story is 100% original and written by a human, yours truly, the author. AI was not used to write, prompt, organize, or otherwise generate this story. This audiobook edition was, however, created using licensed text-to-voice software with a lifelike casting and intonation manually adjusted and refined line by line by me, an art in and of itself. The theme music was written and produced by Kiss the Widow. If you like what you found so far, please like and follow, subscribe, and share. Also, please be sure to check out my socials.